If you want to learn how to make a VR game, then you are in the right place because I've condensed into 2 videos everything you need to know about SteamVR and you are watching the first video. In today's video, I will show you how you can set up a VR scene, add customizable hands, implement teleportation, handle the player inputs and move the player with the joystick. And by the way, if you want to jump to a particular part of the video, I will put the timestamp in the description below. So what is SteamVR? SteamVR is a VR platform powered by Steam, which can handle your VR headset to play some VR game. Compared to the Oculus Studio, which only handles Oculus devices, SteamVR works with a lot of VR headset, and when I say a lot, I really mean a lot. So why is this tutorial important to you as a VR developer? First, because as I said, it targets a lot of headsets, but more importantly, this tutorial series will teach you a lot about the basics of VR, which you can reuse to every VR platform, not just Steam. And now that we got that out of the way, let's make our VR game. Okay, so I'm here inside an empty Unity project. Make sure that SteamVR is running before opening Unity, and if you are using an Oculus device like I am, then you should open the Oculus Studio as well. Oh, and don't worry if you are not using an Oculus like I do. As mentioned in the intro, this tutorial will work for all kinds of headsets. The first thing we need to do is to go to the asset store that you can access here with Windows Asset Store. Then we will search for the SteamVR plugin and download it right away. Okay, now that it's downloaded and imported in our project, SteamVR might ask you to change some settings like the color space from gamma to linear, which basically change the way light is working in our game, but you are not required to do so. Now let's set up our first VR scene. I will right click in the hierarchy and click on a 3D plane to create a plane which will be used as a ground. Oh, and make sure that its position is at 0, 0, 0. Then we'll replace the main camera by the camera rig prefab from the SteamVR plugin that we just downloaded. And let's now hit the play button. So before testing, SteamVR is asking us if we want to set up the input actions of our game. We will learn everything there is to know about the input later on this video, but for now, let's just accept, click Save and Generate, and close this window. If we press play again, you can see that already our VR game is working. I'm able to look inside my headset, move my head, and more than that, my controllers are in the game with me. And you can see that the little buttons such as the joystick move if I touch them. How awesome is that, right? And obviously here the Oculus Touch controller are showing because I'm using an Oculus Rift, but if you are using another headset, the corresponding controller will show. And already that is all you need to do to set up a VR scene. Just one camera and 2 hands. Also, one more important thing is that our game already works in VR because SteamVR has automatically enabled VR when we imported it earlier. You can have a look at this yourself here on Project Settings, Player, XR, and here it is. We can see that we have VR enabled and we also have 2 SDK installed in our project. One is for the Oculus device and the other one is the OpenVR SDK for SteamVR, so make sure that OpenVR is always on top of the Oculus here. Okay, so we already have VR working in our game, but I know you are hungry for more, so let's make it better, and for this we'll use an improved version of the camera rig that is already in the SteamVR SDK and which we will be using for our game. So let's remove our camera rig and instead I will search for the player prefab and drag it into our scene. Now let's go ahead and press play to test what we've done. And already you can see a big change. Now it's not a controller that I have but real hands that are moving according to what I'm doing, which is awesome. And there is more because you can actually choose what type of hands you want. For this, let's go to the left hand and right hand children of the player game object. There you can find the component that is responsible for hands. And now let's replace the render model prefab. You can click on it to open where it is located in our project, and there next to it we have some other hands model. So let's start by dragging the alien model left hand into the render model of our left hand and the alien right hand into the right hand component. And here we go, we now have animated alien hands. You can go on and try the other hand like the floppy hands, which are some jiggly weird things. But for now I will use another one, the left and right render model, which are just simply black leather gloves, which I really like and are super realistic as you can see, so I will stick with them for the rest of the video. Anyway, this is nice and all, but what's really important here is to understand that with SteamVR you can actually create your own hands with your own animations. I won't go in details how to do so in this video, but if you are interested, you should understand how these hands are working and try to replicate this in your own hand model. Okay, so before we add controller, now we have hands, but what if we want both? And that is exactly what we are going to do now. Click on the player game object and I will create a new component called show controllers. In the script, we will need a public variable which will tell if we want to show or not the controllers, and every frame of the game, here in the update function, we will access all the hands of the player with a for each loop. And if we want to show the controller, I will call end.showController or hide controller if we don't. Oh, and one last thing, you need to add the using valve.vr.interaction system here at the top of the script to have access to the player component. Now let's save, go back to Unity and click on play. And here we go, if I check the show controller box, you can see that the controllers appears, but there is one last issue, the hands are not holding the controller. We can quickly fix this by adding one line of code to set the skeleton range of the hand to grab the controller. And here we have it, our controller are showing up and our hands are doing great holding it. Now that this is done, let's move on to part 2 of the video, the teleportation. And if you are enjoying this tutorial so far, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to support the channel and not miss the next video. Okay, so movement in VR is really important, because if not done right, it can lead to motion sickness and completely ruin the experience. So that's why I will show you how to set up in this video the 2 most commonly used locomotion systems in VR, teleportation and touchpad movement. And we will start with teleportation. I will search for the teleporting prefab in the project window and drag it in my scene. So now, if we press play, you can see that 2 things are going on. First, we have these hints that are showing me how to teleport with the correct button, which is pretty nice for beginners but a bit annoying. And second thing, if I actually press the button, you can see that only a red beam appears and I'm not able to teleport. So let's understand where these hints are coming from. Under the hands, we can see that there is a game object called control button hints, which is what made the tooltip appeared. And if we click on the teleporting prefab and open the teleport script, we can see that at the start of the game, the teleportation script will show these hints. So we want to have control on that, so I will add a new boolean variable called showInt and make it by default false. And before showing the hints, I will check if this value is true. And here we go, now we can control if we want or not to have hints on our teleportation system. And in my case, I will leave it unchecked for now. Okay, now for the second issue, we couldn't teleport because we actually didn't set up a proper teleport destination. To do so, we can add certain teleport points in our scene, so go in the project folder and search for teleport point. I will drag it in my scene and duplicate it with Ctrl D. And here we go, now when we press play, we can teleport to this location. How awesome is that? Also, you can have fun with the properties of this location. For example, you can change their color, make a text at the top, or make them active even when we are not searching them. Also, I can set the teleportation point to be locked, which is pretty useful to show the player a zone he will need to access, but which is not available right now. But what if we don't want a teleportation point, but a whole zone to teleport to? Don't worry, because SteamVR's got your back. Just create a 3D object like this plane. I will scale it down a little bit and reset its position. And now if we add the teleport area component to it, you can see that it is now kind of transparent, and if we press play, we can select the zone to teleport to. But this is a bit buggy. The reason is that it is clipping with the other plane we've made, so to fix this, we simply need to move the teleport area a bit to the top, and now everything works fine. And actually you can do this with other things than a plane. For example, here I've added a cube to my scene, and I will duplicate it and add the teleport area to the second cube. And now we have a red cube in the scene which I can teleport to. And as you can see, the first cube is here for the visual and the second for the teleport area. Okay, so everything is fine and all, we can teleport by pressing the touchpad button, but what if I didn't want that? What if I wanted to teleport with the right hand trigger? And to solve this mystery, let's learn more about the input system of SteamVR in the next part of this video. Okay, so as you already know from now, SteamVR needs to deal with a lot of VR headsets, which have different controller, aka different inputs. So to better manage this, they have implemented their own input manager, which will set the input on all kind of controller with one action. To learn what an action is, let's go to Windows SteamVR input. And here we go. Do you remember this window? We had to close it at the start of this tutorial. Now it's the time to learn what's inside. So as you can see, here is a list of actions with different names in what's called an action set. If we go to the default action set, we can find multiple actions that we already saw, like the teleport, skeleton left, right hand. You can see an action like a particular input state that you want to use. To better understand this, let's click here on the Open Binding UI. This opens a localhost web page where you can see your current controller. Here you can see how every action binds to a particular button. For example, the teleport action is bind here in the joystick. So I will edit this to only bind the teleport action with the right trigger. I will start by uncheck the mirror setting here so that I can edit the controller separately. We can delete the teleport joystick binding on the left and right controller. And finally, I will go on the right trigger of our controller here, and I will click on the little plus button. I will then set this new binding to be a trigger, and now here I can set my binding to either click, touch or shoot, and in my case I will set the teleportation to trigger on click. Now let's go back to Unity. Click on Save and Generate and test our application. We have updated correctly our teleportation system. So we just learned how to update an input action, and now I will show you how you can create one. We'll actually create a new action for the touchpad movement. Let's open again the SteamVR input window. Then I will click on the plus button to create a new action. I will call mine touchpad, and we want it to be a vector 2. I will leave this action suggested. This setting is there if your player wants to rebind the input of the game itself, so if you want to prevent that, you can select mandatory. And finally, I will set the localized string to touchpad as well. Now let's first click on Save and Generate and then Open Binding. And here we go, just like before, we will bind this new action to the left touchpad. I will first uncheck mirror. You can see that there is already an action called snap turn, which is using the touch bar here. We could let it there, but I prefer to delete it, and you will see why afterwards. Now let's click on the plus button, select the joystick entry to joystick, and now we can set the touchpad action in the position slot. And we now have a new action. Well done. We can even test it right away by opening the SteamVR input live window, and now you can see that the input for the touchpad works. And we are now ready to use it in the next part of this video, the joystick movement. Okay, we will create a script that will be responsible for the joystick movement. Let's click on the player game object and add a new component. I will name it player controller. At the top of the script, we'll add using valve.vr. We'll need a variable that will be the input to trigger the movement, which will be the SteamVR action touchpad that we just created. Then, in the update function, I will add to the position of the player a new vector3 that goes in the direction of the input by accessing the current axis of the touchpad with input.axis. And as always, when playing with speed in an update function, I need to multiply this by time.delta. Okay, now let's close the script, and in the Unity editor we will set the input to the touchpad we have created and hit the play button. And here we go, we now have a joystick movement. However, you can see that the movement is a bit weird. The best thing would be to always move forward in the direction I'm looking at, and here you can see that it's not the case at the time. To fix this, we will put the input axis direction from the facing point of view of the player. We first need to access the player script, so I will add the using valve.vr.interaction system at the top of the script. Then we can get the head transform by calling player.hmd transform, and finally we can have the direction according to the headset by calling player.transform direction. And now we can use this new direction to move our player. Also, to make sure that the direction is always horizontal, we can use project on plane, which will project the direction on the horizontal plane. And here we have it, we have made a joystick movement according to the direction we are facing with only 2 lines of code. How awesome is that? So now with the left touchpad, we can move, and with the right touchpad, you can see that we can rotate. So we didn't code it ourselves. This was actually in the player prefab, which is amazing. And remember, this is the thing we disabled on the left controller before when we were making a touchpad action. Okay, if you are following this video so far, you might see one more issue with the touchpad locomotion system that we just made. So I've added a stair and a slope in my scene, and as you can see, we have one more issue. If we move toward the stair, we pass right through them. The player doesn't go up. To fix this, let's go in the player component and we will add a character controller. I will set the center to 0.75 and the height to 1.5 so that the collider capsule will start at my feet. And now in my player controller script, we will access this character controller with a new variable which will be initiated at the start of the game in a start function with a getComponent function. And now, instead of modifying the transform position of the player, we can modify the position with character controller.move. And here we go, now let's hit play to see the result. And as you can see, I'm still able to move how I want and I can get on the stair, amazing, right? But there is one last issue still. We are challenging the gravity. So yes, we can get up, but we can't get down because we didn't take gravity into account in our player controller. So really simple, we just need to subtract by a new vector3, which is the direction of the gravity. And don't forget to multiply it as always by time.delta. And now we can get up, but we can fall too, which is awesome. Okay, so before ending this video, we have some more issue to fix. So we made 2 locomotion systems, right? And you could use only one, but if you want to use both at the same time, be careful to check if the magnitude of the input is greater than a certain value in the player controller. It will prevent the locomotion to interfere with the teleportation, and you will have everything working fine like this. Okay, second fix. If you try the game yourself, you can see that your controllers are vibrating sometimes and are doing some weird things. The reason behind this is that the ends are colliding with our character controller we just made, and the script on the ends is making it do weird thing. So an easy fix is to create a new layer called player, assign the player to this layer, and finally go to project settings, physics, and uncheck here the player layer so that the player will ignore all collision with itself. And here we have it. We have learned a lot of things: VR setup, hands, input, teleportation, touchpad movement, and I hope you enjoy watching this video. In the second part, we will learn everything there is to know about interaction. We'll grab objects of all kinds and do some fun things, so stay tuned for next week. So last week, I told you that I've created a new Patreon and we already have 8 patrons, so thanks to them. Their name will appear here at the top of the screen. And if like them you want to support this channel, have access to the source code of this tutorial and an exclusive third part of this SteamVR series, go on and join us. Anyway, thank you for watching this video till the end and see you in the next one.